It's quite ironic, but in Africa, almost every natural resource is found that can be used to make finished products. For example, lithium can be used to make batteries, and other precious metals can be used to make electric vehicles and other electronics. Even raw materials like cocoa, tomato, and other eatables can be used to make end products. Yet, despite this, most African countries export these raw materials at cheap prices, instead of adding value to it and earning more profits. That's because the colonialists ensured no local industries could develop in Africa during their rule and after their so-called exit. This was done so African countries had no other option than to sell those raw materials and natural resources to these imperialists at the cheapest prices. However, the young leader of Burkina Faso, Captain IBRAHIM Traoré, is changing this. He has set on a mission to produce products locally for the local demands and then export the remaining, no matter how small or big the product is. This encouraged the young and innovative people of Burkina Faso, who know their ideas will be respected and supported. That's why there has been news that Burkina Faso has started manufacturing new types of electric elevators that can be exported. So what are the details? In this video, let's know about the whole news story. In a world where technological progress has been monopolized by Western and Asian nations, Burkina Faso, a country that was never expected to industrialize, has shattered expectations. The manufacture of its first locally made electric elevator is far more than just a mechanical achievement. It is a declaration of economic independence, an act of defiance against the West's exploitative economic model, and a glimpse into a future where Africa produces rather than just consumes. For decades, Burkina Faso, like much of Africa, has been forced into a neocolonial economic structure. The country exports its raw materials, gold, cotton, and agricultural products at dirt-cheap prices, only to buy back finished products at inflated costs from Western nations. This structural dependency has drained the country's wealth, stifled innovation, and kept Burkina Faso in a perpetual state of economic subjugation. But now, something extraordinary is happening. Burkina Faso is starting to manufacture. It is adding value to its own resources instead of shipping them away for pennies and waiting for expensive imports to arrive. This locally produced elevator is not just a machine. It is a symbol of an awakening, a sign that Africa is breaking free from the shackles of economic slavery. It represents the first real step toward an industrialized Burkina Faso, where the nation controls its own production, its own economy, and its own future. For centuries, Burkina Faso, like most African nations, has been locked in an exploitative cycle. It has been an exporter of raw materials, but an importer of finished products. This economic model, enforced by Western economic policies, trade agreements, and structural adjustment programs, has ensured that African countries remain dependent and economically weak. There are reports that IMF programs were designed in such a way that African countries remain dependent on the West, even in making a small decision. Take the example of gold. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's leading gold producers, yet it had almost no control over the refining, processing, or global trade of its own gold. Foreign companies mined it, processed it abroad, and then sold it back to Africa at higher prices in the form of jewelry, electronics, and financial assets. The same story applies to cotton, oil, and countless other resources. This economic model is designed to ensure that Africa stays a resource provider, while the West remains the producer and seller. But what happens when Burkina Faso stops playing that game? What happens when it starts building industries, manufacturing its own goods, and keeping wealth inside its borders? The answer is simple. Burkina Faso will become an economic powerhouse, and that is exactly what is happening now. The elevator is not just a product. It is a prototype of a future where Burkina Faso produces its own machinery, vehicles, and infrastructure instead of waiting for handouts from the West. The young Burkinabe inventor, Mustafa, is the designer of the electric elevator and represents the new face of African industrialization. His creation is proof that Africa has always had the talent, the knowledge, and the capacity to industrialize. The only thing it lacked was leadership that believed in its own people. Before we continue further, tell us, Are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. For too long, African leaders have placed their trust in Western corporations, outsourcing everything from infrastructure to basic consumer goods. But under Captain IBRAHIM Traore's leadership, things are changing. There is now an active push to support local innovators and industrialists, to empower Africa's young minds instead of forcing them to seek opportunities abroad. This mindset shift is critical. When African youth see Mustafa creating a high-tech product in Burkina Faso, they realize that they do not need to run to Europe or America to achieve success. They see it as possible to innovate, build, and manufacture right here at home. Traore's leadership is not just political, but also psychological. He has planted a new seed of confidence in the minds of young Burkinabe innovators, a belief that they can lead Africa into the future rather than waiting for the West to dictate its progress. The manufacturing of an elevator might seem like a small step, but symbolically, it is a giant leap. It signals that Burkina Faso is done being just an exporter. It is ready to produce, ready to build, ready to compete. The fact that Burkina Faso is now manufacturing instead of simply exporting resources is deeply unsettling for Western economic powers. Why? Because it threatens the very foundation of their economic control over Africa. The West knows that after this, Africa will not export its raw materials at cheap prices and will not buy finished products from the West at 10 times higher prices. But what happens when Burkina Faso and other African nations start producing their own goods? What happens when they stop relying on Western imports? What happens when they start building their own factories, processing their own raw materials, and selling their own finished products to the world? The answer is clear. Africa stops being the world's economic slave. Burkina Faso's elevator project is just the beginning. The next steps, manufacturing industrial equipment, automobiles, and electronic goods, are inevitable. And when that happens, the West's economic control over Africa will begin to crumble. This is why Burkina Faso's progress is being met with such resistance. The West does not want an industrialized Africa. It does not want an Africa that manufactures its own goods and controls its own economy. It wants a weak, dependent Africa that continues to supply cheap raw materials while importing overpriced finished products. But with leaders like Traore and innovators like Mustafa, that era is coming to an end. The success of this locally manufactured elevator is just the beginning. The real question now is, what comes next? Burkina Faso has already shown its ability to innovate. The next crucial step for Burkina Faso is to expand industrial production by scaling up the manufacturing of locally made elevators and other essential machinery. It is not enough to produce just a single prototype. Mass production is necessary to prove that Burkina Faso can compete in regional and global markets. This means establishing assembly lines, supply chains, and production facilities that can manufacture these products efficiently and at scale. By doing so, the country will move beyond just demonstrating innovation and into a phase where it can commercialize its technological advancements, making locally produced goods a standard in the market rather than an exception. Another key area of focus must be developing a skilled workforce to sustain and expand industrialization. Without a well-trained labor force, industrial progress will stall. Therefore, Burkina Faso must invest heavily in engineering, technical education, and vocational training, ensuring that young people are equipped with the skills necessary to design, build, and maintain complex machinery. Establishing technical universities, apprenticeships, and specialized training programs will allow the next generation of Burkinabe workers to participate actively in the country's industrial future, rather than watching foreign experts take over key sectors. Furthermore, a crucial step in securing this progress is strengthening intra-African trade. Instead of relying on Europe or the US for industrial goods, Burkina Faso must build strong economic ties with its African neighbors. Establishing regional trade agreements, cross-border industrial projects, and shared technology development programs will allow the continent to develop a self-sustaining economy. By trading with fellow African nations, Burkina Faso can ensure that its industrial products, such as elevators, are not only used domestically, but also sold across Africa, increasing its market reach and economic influence. Finally, government policies must be crafted to protect local industries from foreign competition. Trade policies, tariffs on imported finished goods, and subsidies for local manufacturers must be implemented to prevent foreign companies from undermining Burkina Faso's domestic production. Without proper regulation, large multinational corporations could flood the market with cheaper, mass-produced imports, crushing the budding local industries before they even have a chance to thrive. Government intervention is necessary to ensure that domestic manufacturers are given the space to grow and that industrialization remains a sustainable, long-term strategy. With Captain IBRAHIM Traoré leading the charge, Burkina Faso is well on its way to becoming a model of African industrialization. The message is clear. Africa is no longer waiting for the West to develop it. Africa is developing itself. What do you think? Should African countries first focus on manufacturing products that can be exported or that can be used to fulfill local demands? Isn't it true that Africa should ensure self-sufficiency, produce products, and start a system of trade among African countries? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on IBRAHIM Traoré's vision to transform Burkina Faso and make it a powerful and developed country, no matter the hardships. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.